mentioned the state's growers were behind normal in progress for harvesting this year's corn. Farmers advanced only 5 points last week to total 15% completion. That's 9 points behind the Nebraska 5-year average. With corn still left in the field, Nebraska Extension plant pathologist Tamra Jackson-Ziems says it might be a good idea to check plants for evidence of stalk rot. We talked with Tamra recently to learn what producers should plan to do if they find trouble.
There are some stalk rot issues out there in some locations, and so they may be patchy, they may be individual plants. In a few areas we've had some plants lodging already, so it's definitely worth getting out and checking fields if you're at high risk.
And those high risk areas need to be done with what?
Well, high risk would be any kind of major stress, whether that's a lot of leaf area lost to insect disease or hail damage. Also, if you had any ponding earlier in the season, nitrogen loss, anything like that. And so I would get out and do the push or pinch test.
And you'd like to harvest those fields earliest if possible?
At least if you know you've got a problem with stalk rots, if you can harvest them earlier or at least the first ones, it would help maybe avoid some losses later.
A couple fields in the state have had some hail problems recently. What kind of problems can that cause to ears?
Well, the damage that hail causes is really going to be determined by the age of the plant, the stage that it's at. And so a lot of our corn probably may be safe from that hail damage. A lot of it may have been matured enough, but some of the maybe later maturing or later planted hybrids that had kernels that may be in the earlier dent stages, maybe a little softer, we could see maybe some of the ear rot development out there, and so that'd be something we'd want to watch for.
How much damage is enough to be concerned?
Well, any wounding to the ear can open it up to fungal infection, whether that is caused by the hail or insect feeding or otherwise.
And what do you need to do with those plants or those that grain specifically?
Well, if you scout that field and you husk back a representative number of those ears, if you find that you've got a problem with ear rot diseases, it's important not to store that if you can avoid it. And if you are going to store it, keep in mind that you're going to want to dry it down to less than 15% moisture and cool it off as quickly as possible at harvest and store for the shortest possible time, because even under the best storage conditions, it will likely get worse in the bin.
A couple years ago we had talked about farmers seeing black dust behind combines as they were going in the field. Is that a problem again this year?
We have had people asking questions about some of the black spores or black dust when they're harvesting or walking through some of these fields. We're seeing it too, and so keep in mind that a lot of those, it could be from smuts that developed, the big gray galls that we talked about earlier in the season, but it can be too when we've had some rainfall events late in the season like we have, and we often see that black dusty sporulation. Those are fungal spores. Those aren't bad guys, those are actually beneficial fungi. And it can make it look like smoke during harvest, and it's alarming to a lot of people, and so usually not a problem.
The grain is fine?
Usually so, and so you'd want to do some double checking of that, but definitely.
Some of the problems that farmers have had this year, not necessarily the ones we've talked about today, but how do you recommend they document these and think about variety selection the next time?
Absolutely. Well, many of the things that we've talked about are caused by pathogens that will overwinter, and most of them, maybe except for rust diseases, everything else will overwinter from year to year, usually in the residue, the debris, or the soil itself. And so that's pretty much a guarantee that if weather conditions are right again, whether it's next year or in following years, they're going to see it again. And so if you can make notes, mental notes, and maybe notes in your files now about where some of those diseases occurred, you can use that information this winter when making hybrid selections to try to avoid having those problems again.
The Crop Watch website has more information on using correct masks for respiratory safety during and after harvest. We'll link to those resources on the Market Journal homepage.